Well, we're here for a wonderful interview today with somebody joining us from farther away than normal. We're here with David Enker, and he's joining us from Haarlem in the Netherlands, outside of Amsterdam. And he has a book out that everybody needs to go on our show notes and look at the trailer. It's called Phantom Parents, Memoir of an Adoptee. And it just looks great. We can't wait to get to know you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hi,
Nice to be
David.
here.
So
Thanks.
glad you're here.
It's an honor.
Thank you. And so we were just talking how you came to find us. You were listening to podcasts and
Yes.
kind of research for your book.
Yes. Yeah, I started with my book. Well, it's an old couple of years ago, but only more recently I started to put the final touch to it, like half a year ago. And that's when I did some online research and came across your website. And while I was putting the last hand to my book, I learned so many things I could have used in the book, that baby scoop era, for example.
I was just gonna ask you, had you, prior to starting your book, read anything about the experience, like the primal
Hardly.
wound or any of?
No, I learned it all from you. It's right here.
Ah. What a book.
Yeah, I haven't finished it actually, but because it's rather painful to read now and then.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, I discovered some old wounds that were coming from, my own adoption.
That you hadn't connected before?
No, I never made the dots connect.
Same until that 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago.
Yeah, I'm 53 now, and I just came to all this in my 50s.
Us too.
Yeah,
exactly the same. And the
so
primal wound. Yeah.
In hindsight, so many things all become clear now. It's amazing, and it's an ongoing process. My book is finished now. It's out for sale, but I still keep on reading and listening to the stories from you guys and Damon Davis and a bunch of other interesting podcasts.
Well, how did so tell us your story? We don't know it, and from the tell us how it worked for you.
And I don't know that we had a couple of English UK adoptee stories, but certainly never from the Netherlands. So
yes,
well,
very
I used
curious
to live
to hear this.
In the UK for years. My wife is British, so I lived in London, and that's why I wrote my book in English as well. So my first reader can actually read it.
Oh, good.
But yes, I was born in 1970. I'm the product of the summer of 1969. The summer of love.
Yeah.
My parents were in their early 20s. They were, like students. Especially my mother, who was a student in Amsterdam, and decided to bring me up on her own. That was the idea. It was the 70s, where there was a lot of feminist kind of feelings about raising your child on your own. If you want to, you can do that. But she was 21, so it was really a difficult decision. So she realized soon enough after I was born that she couldn't look after me. So when
how long were you with her? 3 months.
Roughly. Yeah, and there are still letters that she wrote of the time when she kept a diary, and I only got these not so long ago, where she really was happy with me, but she couldn't look after me. So she said to a couple of friends in the environment she said, "Can you look after him when I'm studying?" This was in a different city, in The Hague. My mother was living in Amsterdam, and she studied. she finished her studies, and then when I was about 3 years old, she wanted to get me back, basically. And in the meantime, she kept on visiting me, but only occasionally. But when I was 3, my new parents, my adoptive parents said, especially my siblings said, well, he's too much part of our family now. So there
And these
was
were friends of hers that she had asked?
well, the friends was maybe a big word. They were like already as established family. They had a reputation of being the center of attention in The Hague, where a lot of people showed up at their house. Lots of Americans came there, and they showed up with a guitar. And this was the model family in the 70s. And I didn't have any saying in this, of course, but what I didn't know and only heard after is that there were legal battles over me by getting my custody. So when I was past 3, my mother kept on visiting me, but the 2 mothers, the biological and the adoptive mother, got into a bit of a rivalry, but stayed amicable in as much as possible. But that was under the skin. It was very difficult, of course.
It's so painful for your mother.
Yeah, both mothers.
Mm-hmm.
So
Where was your birth mother's family throughout all this?
Yes, well, this is a different story, that she could have had help from her parents if it was not that they were severely traumatized still by the Second World War. They were survivors of concentration camps. And they had been married and divorced twice with each other. Whereas my grandmother had a previous marriage and was damaged, beyond repair, basically. And they had a family of 4 children, including my mother, and they were all damaged by being second-generation war victims.
Yeah. And
my grandparents couldn't look after me. They were not healthy enough for that. I was always in contact with my grandmother, my biological grandmother. She was coincidentally living nearby me. And I heard some stories about the trauma that is being passed on through the generations. So my mother couldn't rely on her parents to help out. And she was already broken with my father, who was wanting to raise me or even marry my mother, but she wouldn't let him getting in the system, or whatever you call it.
Really?
So my mother is a complicated person. She got a new family of her own. So she married someone else, not my father.
And how old were you when that happened?
About 10 years old.
Okay.
So I was actually at her wedding, and then she got 2 more children. Those are my half brother and half sister. And I was never officially adopted, so I kept my mother's last name. But my half brother and half sister got their father's name. Whereas the family where I grew up in, I was always the one that looked a bit different. I was smaller, shorter, darker hair, darker eyes, whereas my brother and sister are these really tall Dutch people with blonde hair, blue eyes. And so the differences were there, but if you didn't know, you might not have. No, I could have been like a 7-year younger sibling.
It must have been very confusing for you.
Yes.
Going.
Well, this is something that takes place in hindsight. Like at the moment, I didn't know any better. I thought that everybody was adopted. It was just a normal thing to me. And until I got into conversations with people, and they said, "That's really complicated story you've got there." And Yeah, I had difficulties with it in my teenage years.
I'm sure that's when
And
things,
I got really rebellious and couldn't pay attention at school, even though I was clever enough to go ahead, but I didn't. I was too much interested in quick results now in life. I wanted to live fast, basically.
No, I can relate to that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so it took me a lot longer to finish my high school, and then I went to university where I followed every university study you can imagine, from physics to art to, but didn't finish one. So I was really struggling with my identity, basically. You know,
yeah,
I wanted to explore lots of different things, and then I had a brief moment where I thought, yeah, that's it, psychology. I'm going to be a psychologist because I know how the mind works. How complicated family situations work. But soon enough, I realized, no, this is not it. I'm not seeing myself making a career in this, because now I'm interested in art and I want to know what it means to be taken by a beautiful painting or read a good book, or and immerse myself in the whole art experience.
Did you, going back to those early years for a minute,
yeah,
so even though your two mothers were having this struggle that no one,
Yeah.
that wasn't outward
mhm.
necessarily, did you continue to see your biological mother all throughout your childhood? Was there a period
Yes.
of break, or?
It was generally like once or twice a year on birthdays or something. And gradually she would show up with her husband and children. And they would be sitting in a different corner at the birthday party. They would just, it would be a bit awkward, but
Yeah,
I still didn't really comprehend. Like I just thought, yeah, that's my mother who comes and visit. But it was until I was in my 20s that I saw her once a year. But then things got even more complicated because I lived on my own. I became a student myself and wanted to live my own life. So I didn't see her that much. And then when I moved back to Amsterdam, I was actually living very close to her, coincidentally. And that's when we collided. So in my 20s, I just had a reversed meeting with her. So most of um, your your guests on your show get into a reunion, but I had a opposite. So I had a reunion when I was a child, and then gradually lost contact with my biological mother. So like I said, she's a really complicated person, and I don't want to, paint her black or anything like that, but
mhm.
she has a really complicated personality, which didn't make it easy. And to put credit to her, she had it rough too, and we have this sort of negative chemistry together where we both blame each other for each other's pain,
Mm.
for each other's rejection.
I could completely see this.
We
I
look
want,
a lot alike.
yeah,
We are having same physical features. We have the same voice. If not, I would have a male variation, of course. But we look in our looks alike, and in our behavior, we are very similar.
Are her two other children close to her, or does that sort of her early
yeah,
second generation
Yeah,
Holocaust trauma
she owned
affect?
she had a sister that was very close to her, who had a son who's my cousin, and I consider him my closest relative, even though he's very different than me. But he grew up with his mother, and I didn't. Other than that, we're from the same age. We can relate to both our mothers being complicated women.
mm,
Um, and my mother had this new marriage, which suddenly turned into a model marriage. Like she she had a very successful family life. The kids are all well established in society. And I'm like this in between things.
Yeah. It's like you're like adrift in your own family,
Yeah.
like not anchored. It feels very not anchored.
I think that's
so
a common with adoptees too, but you don't belong in
Anywhere.
either of your
No.
families. We're
No.
just
No, I was looking in different places for belonging. In my teenage years, it was like music and films and interests. I went out a lot. And then when in my 20s, I discovered my family's heritage from my mother's side being these Holocaust victims. And I identified with a lot of Jewish things. Because that was some traits that I recognized, and I thought maybe I should immerse myself in this. And I went to Israel, for example, and felt like a recognition in many ways, like physical things or little details like wisecracks. And but it's all, I wouldn't say an illusion, but it's projection. Yeah. It's just a way of almost grabbing onto something you want to belong to, but you don't belong there. You need to be strong and stand for yourself, who you are. But who are you? That's the big question.
The constant search, right?
It's a constant search. And I find some rest the last couple of years in this, where especially since my son was born. It was only 5 years ago. I was a bit late. I've postponed the fatherhood as much as I could, but 5 years ago, it was my turn. And I love my son. He's great. And it's, for him, he doesn't know the history of all this. And when he sits on my lap and I feel my own flesh and blood, which I have had before, like not some of your guests who had that for the first time with their child. I've touched my mother or father.
Yeah.
But this is different. He sits on my lap and I sniff his head.
I do the same. Like, I used to do the same.
It's like you drink him in.
With his head.
Yeah, it's great. It's really great. It's
I wish I could still do that to him.
He's 20 or something, right?
25.
25, they'd be like, yeah. Stop.
Well, never know.
You never know. Aw.
He'd probably let me.
So you have a 5-year-old little boy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he's great. He's my answer to this identity question, basically. I'm not putting too much in his shoes, like he's not having any
well, it's great that you because unlike Louise and myself, you are recognizing all that he's young, so
he's young.
You get to, like, I look back on my parenting sometimes and think, gosh, my unawareness of my stuff probably played a part in my parenting.
Boy, did I too. Yeah. But because we push it off, you push it like your mother did. You push down your trauma.
Yes. Well, it could be not knowing could be some kind of a good thing as well.
Yeah.
I'm always wondering what happens to adoptees who don't know they were adopted.
It's interesting. Yeah.
The late discovery.
It's a bit difficult to find out, of course, because they don't know it.
They don't know.
Yeah.
So as you were growing up in your adoptive family, did you call your parents mom and dad?
I was curious of
were you close to them?
I don't know if it's a Dutch thing or the family that I grew up in, but I always called my mother by her first name. And but so did my brother and sister, who were their real children.
Okay.
although more recently they still sometimes suddenly call her mom. But for me, it's first name, and the same, of course, for my biological mother. I call her by her first name. But yeah, it's a sensitive subject because it comes to the essence of who my adoptive mother is, and she raised me, and I love her, and she loves me. But it's still, there is still something that is different.
Mm.
You know, it's we get along really good. We talk very often on the phone, or I visit her. She's in her 80s now, and yeah, the good thing is she likes to laugh a lot, so it's always a good time with her. Whereas my biological mother is, yeah, she's 1 minute in and she starts talking about the Holocaust and her parents.
Mm.
Yeah. Heavier.
Yeah, very heavy.
I was going to ask you about, so you mentioned your dad, your biological father.
Yes.
He wanted to be involved and to raise you. How did that work out with him later? If there was yeah.
Or did you see
Yeah.
him in your childhood? Yeah.
Well, only once, when I was 10 years old, he showed up at my birthday.
Oh.
And I was 10. I thought, who are you? What,
Yeah.
He gave me a game, and he was staring at me, and I thought, who is this man who looks a little bit like me, but was kind of shy, not too imposing himself, sort of observing. And I didn't make much of it until I was in my teenage years, and my adoptive father had passed away. So they were already divorced when I was 2 years old, my adoptive parents.
Oh,
Oh.
okay. Yeah, that's
So I was
that's
just
always, that's
with
another thing to
Yeah.
add on to. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I was with a single mother and 3 children. So
I was with a single dad and 4 children.
Mm-hmm.
right.
Similar.
Yeah. Yeah, that's adding on to the complications.
Yes.
And but I kept in contact with my adoptive father. I would go there on a holiday or something. But he passed away when I was 15. And then I got more curious to my biological father, which I went to see my biological mother, and I said, who is this guy? And she wrote his name on a piece of paper, and I could do the research myself. She wouldn't let go much of him.
Very
So
dramatic, huh?
yeah, she hated him.
Oh.
They were quite similar, but they were water and fire.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got the phone number, it took me a few months before I had the guts to call him, but I did. And then a few months after that, I went to visit him. And yeah, so I was almost 18 years old, and I rang the doorbell to somebody that I only knew a tiny photograph what he looked like. He's half with his face on the photograph. There's a beard in his face. And I'm sitting there as a baby. That's the photo that I had. And then this man opened the door that was very friendly and welcoming. And we had chat for hours and hours and hours. And a lot of things became clear about myself at that stage. You know, I was wondering about my temperament and some physical traits, and I could see it all coming from him as well. So here I am, adopted, but I look like the spitting image of both my parents. Not anymore, by the way.
Did you feel when you were like, I feel sorry for him. Did he have a lot of loss from this? Or
yeah, he wanted to adopt me, or
have you raise you.
Yes, but yeah, it wasn't meant to be. And he said, I don't want you to think that there are obligations that I would need to catch up on lost time now, that I need to, you know, be a father, that I cannot live up to that expectation. He sort of apologized in advance for not having been around, but also preemptively said, I cannot be probably who you want me to be. He wasn't like Holocaust stories, but he also had a very damaged childhood, and didn't want any responsibility in raising me, even though he secretly wanted it. It was very complicated. So
Did you, when you heard all of this, did you have, and maybe you didn't, and maybe it was only in the last, and recently when you've started connecting the dots, but was there any kind of retroactive / retrospective anger or with all of the adults involved, like your adoptive parents for not letting your biological parents raise you, your biological mother maybe not fighting hard enough, or any of that? Did that kind of come to the surface?
Yeah, well, I tend to see myself as very civilized and not let anger get the best of me. But to be honest, I was blaming the system for whatever that may be, that because all these people involved couldn't help themselves. They were basically the victim of their own past, and their own actions were the direct result of that. And I cannot really blame them. What I do blame is the leniency to which decisions have been made, like the 70s, where anything goes.
Yeah.
And just divorce, you know, or don't even bother getting together, and just you know, go and have a commune with 16 people. And
right.
Yeah, I had a very strong antipathy towards hippies for a long time. Until I discovered I'm a bit of a hippie myself.
We don't like what we see, you know, in ourselves.
Well,
and
also
others.
that 70s message, because I too had antipathy, not necessarily towards hippies, but towards that early feminism that said, women, you should just focus on you and what you want. And, you know, it's all about you.
Yeah,
which increased divorce. Yes, but that was how I looked at it. But the divorce rates kind of skyrocketed.
Yes.
During that era, you know, children
got lost in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
The me generation. I feel like that era of parents were the me generation.
That's now even stronger than ever before.
Yeah, this is true. It's I feel it's I mean, your story, it is so similar and different, but it's still just the loss. You have the holes to fill, you know. It makes me so happy to hear about your son. It just I feel exactly like, oh, I remember that. Just,
and may I add, I have a lovely wife.
Ah. Oh, that's wonderful.
Where do you stand with your birth parents now?
Yeah, that's
yeah. Well, my father, I'm still in contact with. I talk to him on the phone a lot, and now and then visit him. He's in a little bit frail health, but his spirits are high. And my mother is, since my son was born, I have not been in contact with her, because she came to the birth visit and started talking about herself.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's all evolving around her in her universe. And in the meantime, since my son was born, I also got some bad news in another way, because from what I first thought was the leftover of my adoption history, like anxiety and depression, later I thought maybe there is a COVID, because I couldn't smell anymore, but it turned out to be Parkinson.
Oh.
So 2
That's a
years
lot.
ago, I got the Parkinson diagnosis.
Mm.
And in this process, when I talk to my mother and I tell her I've got anxiety, I've got depression, I've got Parkinson, she's like, yes, but I have.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
I
don't blame me.
understand
Yeah. So it's very difficult to break the ice. I know, we used to be friends on Facebook, for example, and I had to cut off ties. So via, she's trying to poke little attempts of contact. I know that because she's done it before in the past when we had a previous breakup. It's like a relationship.
I was just
Yeah.
going to say that. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
very,
Yeah.
you talked
Just like an
about,
unhealthy relationship
Yes.
that you try to
Exactly.
walk away from. Yeah.
Yeah.
I give you
Um,
credit for being so, keeping it where it needs to be healthy for you.
Boundaries, having
Yes.
boundaries.
Mhm.
It's hard as
Yes.
adoptees to have boundaries.
It
I
is.
cannot permit her disturbing influence at the moment. It might happen in the future, but I cannot predict how she will be, which
Yeah.
makes it very difficult. But she does need to change. And she will probably say the same about me. And that's the trap.
Yeah. that is-
Do you stay in touch with your siblings, her other
A
children?
little bit, yes. So when I wrote my book in the crowdfunding campaign first, I reached out to them and they were interested in my book. So my sister just recently gave birth to a child, and that created a bond. So I went and visited her. My brother, my half brother, has 2 daughters. So that's also something that bonded us by having young children. And unlike our mother, they are very uncomplicated, especially my brother. He's just a nice guy. But I couldn't say I'm in deep contact with them or anything like that. Like I see them once a year, maybe, if at all.
And maybe the children is the healing generation, maybe they'll, as cousins, come together and.
Yeah. I always had that with my own cousins. We could always talk about the mess up of our parents and their lost generation or whatever. And I thought we can do it better. And I think actually I do it better.
Did your father have children?
No,
Oh, he never did.
I'm his only child.
And did he get married or anything? Or he just kind of
Yes,
have a?
well, not officially, but he's been with a partner for more than 50 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a
so
long relationship.
Not long after I was born. And fashion to get married went out of fashion, I guess, a long time ago. Although me and my wife got married.
Yeah.
Which was breaking of tradition.
Yeah.
But this was another thing when we decided to get married. Like my wife is from a very relatively normal family. Like there's no one adopted or have siblings or stuff like that.
Did her parents stay together? Does she come from divorce?
Yes.
Or?
Yeah, no, they are still together and her siblings are still together. But the wedding we were supposed to have, I would have to invite both my mothers. And this was before the breakup, say. But I couldn't see my 2 mothers, arguing at my wedding. So I decided to have a very small wedding without my family and just witnesses, just some friends. And this was the one condition that I had in our wedding, is not to have my 2 mothers. And they are angry and disappointed. But I just think I did a good thing because they would be.
It was a day
arguing
for
instead.
you. It was a day
Right.
for
And
you.
at some point people just have to do what is going to be best for them emotionally.
Yeah, they got the postcard.
Yeah.
Oh, you're funny. Yeah.
Wow. So do you feel like you're now past it all, or do you feel like there's still a healing journey ahead of you?
No, I tend to think that I was past it for decades, and then it came back working on the book.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Not in a painful way. I'm too old, I think, to be really touched or influenced by it. I do a lot of self-development, say, where I just see any challenge that comes in my path, whether it be adoption related or now Parkinson, as a new path, a new obstacle in my road, and I deal with it in the way that I deal with it. So it's not hurting me anymore. I feel pretty good, actually. I think I've got a story to tell that's worth it, that's unique, and it shapes me who I am, and I get the benefits from it. I tend to see the positive side of things and be optimistic, because I have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a great
Health.
attitude to have, a healthy
It is.
attitude
Yeah.
to have. Can you hold up your book for people that are looking on YouTube?
Phantom
We
Parents.
will put a link for where people can get that as
I
well
like
as
the art because you
yeah,
have
it's
the
really
child
beautiful.
is in color and then all the parents are in black and white.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's
I
neat.
love
Yeah,
that.
so those are the phantom parents, and it's a round story. It's is it me or is it my son? Is it the story going to repeat itself? And well, I sort of gave it away already, but yeah,
I
it's
think
not a thriller in that way.
Yeah.
I think your
It's
son
highly
is a very
illustrated.
lucky.
It is
Yeah.
unusual in that I used lots of photographs and illustrations,
Oh yeah, it's
like a
beautiful.
graphic novels story. It's got
It might have to be a book that we in one of our seasons
Yeah.
read.
yeah,
Be
well,
good.
you'll be
Sign a copy for us so we can have
Yes.
it.
yes, I can send you a copy, that's for sure.
It'd be
Love it.
great.
Just let me know and I'll send you both a copy. I still got
Well,
some.
thank you for reaching out
Yes.
to us and sharing with us. And I really
It's been a
appreciate
treat.
your
Yeah, it's
mature and
been,
evolved
Yeah,
way of looking at the world.
me
I
too.
hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, really, it's refreshing to speak with you, actually, to hear it from this
Well,
journey of yours. You know?
yeah, it's something that I've mentioned to you guys is also in the book. I hope that that it is kind of like a universal story, that it's not just a particular individual showcase of look at me, this is what happened to me. I also have a couple of side paths in the book where, like for example, a trip to North America in my 20s. That's about maturing, basically.
Discovery.
Self-discovery, yeah. And it's altogether, I think, a book about life. And working on it has helped me a lot. And life goes on, so I'm just doing other things at the moment. And but I'm still, doing things related to the book.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
my life is just you're never too old to learn, and
That's
it's
right.
it's an ongoing process.
This is true.
Yeah. Life does go on and we sometimes discover the best stuff later, that's what we're
Yes.
discovering. So
Yeah, no, I've been enjoying tremendously your guests, and yes, they discover themselves in mid to late age, some of them,
mhm.
and yeah, it's a unique thing. And and one thing I've learned from you guys, it's the community that's out there of other adoptees and how they can talk to each other and skip a couple of small talk.
Yes.
Get
chapters.
right into it, right?
Yes, and I love it.
Oh, thank you. We love
Yeah.
it too.
Yeah.
Well,
Like when we-
thanks for coming
Yeah.
on, and it's been great to meet you and talk to you.
And Sarah, we have a friend over in the Netherlands to go see.
Oh
Yes,
yeah,
you're always welcome. You're always welcome.
Tell your wife, we want to meet you guys.
Yeah, no, that's you're welcome.
Thank you. And you too, if you come to see California or Kansas City or anything, let us
yeah.
know.
He's going to be jumping to Kansas City.
Yeah.
He might.
It's a big destination for Europeans.
There's a lot going on there right now.
Yeah.
Thanks so
Yeah.
much, David.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.